Sometimes the most dangerous thing a man can carry is not a weapon, but someone else's fear. Rain hammered the empty highway outside Birmingham, Alabama, turning the blacktop silver beneath the flashing patrol lights. The storm had rolled in fast, swallowing the road in sheets of cold water and blurred headlights. And somewhere in the distance thunder groaned across the sky like a warning too late to hear. Isaiah Coleman tightened both hands around the steering wheel of his aging white Ford pickup and glanced at the rearview mirror. In the back seat, 9-year-old Noah sat curled beneath a faded gray blanket, clutching a small stuffed bear with one burned ear stitched back together by hand. The boy's headphones rested crooked over his ears, though no music played through them anymore. His breathing had changed the second the police lights appeared behind them. Faster now. Uneven. Nervous. Isaiah noticed immediately. He always noticed. "It's okay, buddy," he said softly, keeping his voice calm and steady, almost gentle enough to disappear beneath the rain. "Just stay with me, all right?" Noah nodded once, but didn't answer. His fingers tightened around the bear instead. Isaiah pulled onto the shoulder beside a mile marker half hidden by weeds and puddles. Water splashed beneath the tires as the truck rolled to a stop. For a brief moment, everything felt suspended in blue and red light. The windshield wipers scraped back and forth in a tired rhythm. Rainwater streamed down the glass in crooked rivers. Then the patrol car door swung open. Officer Ryan Mercer stepped out into the storm with one hand near his holster and the other gripping a flashlight hard enough to whiten his knuckles. Tall, broad-shouldered, jaw locked tight. The beam cut through the rain and landed directly inside Isaiah's truck. Noah flinched instantly, turning his face away from the light. Ryan approached fast. Too fast. His boots slammed against wet pavement while radio chatter crackled from his shoulder mic. Possible armed suspect driving a white pickup. The dispatcher repeated faintly through static. Ryan's eyes never left Isaiah. "Driver, lower your window now." Isaiah obeyed immediately. Cold rain and flashing lights spilled into the cab. "Evening, officer," Isaiah said carefully. "Is there a problem?" Ryan ignored the question. His flashlight swept across the truck interior, lingering on Isaiah's dark hoodie, the tangled extension cords in the passenger seat, the heavy toolbox in the back. License and registration. Isaiah reached slowly toward the dashboard compartment. "Sir, my son gets anxious around shouting, so I'm just gonna, hands where I can see them." Ryan barked suddenly, his voice exploding across the rain-soaked highway. Noah jerked hard in the back seat, his breathing catching instantly. Isaiah froze with both palms visible. "Officer, please," he said quietly. "My kid's in the car." Ryan stepped closer. Rain rolled down the brim of his cap and across his rigid face. "You think I don't know what I'm looking at?" he snapped. "Step out of the vehicle." Isaiah swallowed once. Slowly, carefully, he opened the truck door. The dome light flickered on overhead, illuminating the reflective patch stitched onto his work jacket. Coleman Electrical Emergency Response. Ryan barely looked at it. Noah suddenly spoke from the back seat, his small voice trembling. "Dad?" Isaiah turned slightly toward him. "Hey," he whispered gently. "Look at me, Noah. Just breathe for me, okay? Just like we practiced." But Ryan mistook the movement. In one sharp motion, he grabbed Isaiah by the arm and shoved him against the side of the truck. The flashlight clattered onto the pavement. Noah screamed. The sound pierced through the storm, so suddenly even the rain seemed to pause around it. Isaiah winced as cold metal pressed against his shoulder blade, but he never raised his voice, never fought back. His eyes stayed locked on the terrified little boy inside the truck. "Please," Isaiah said, breathing hard now. "You're scaring my son." Ryan's grip tightened anyway. Behind them, headlights from passing cars slowed one by one in the rain. The flashing lights painted the rain in violent shades of red and blue as traffic crawled past the shoulder of Interstate 65. Drivers slowed just enough to stare before disappearing back into the storm, their headlights stretching across the wet highway like pale ghosts. Isaiah Coleman stood motionless beside his truck with his palms open against the cold metal door, while Officer Ryan Mercer kept one rigid hand on his shoulder. Water soaked through Isaiah's jacket collar and dripped down his neck, but he barely seemed to notice. All his attention remained fixed on the trembling little boy inside the cab. Noah had pulled his knees tightly against his chest now. The stuffed bear rested beneath his chin, one tiny hand gripping the worn fabric, so hard his knuckles looked pale beneath the flickering patrol lights. His breathing had become shallow again. Fast. Fragile. The kind that always came before panic swallowed him whole. Isaiah recognized every sign instantly because he had spent the last 3 years learning how to read fear before it exploded. Noah, Isaiah called softly through the rain, forcing calm into every syllable. Listen to my voice, son. You are okay. I need you to count breaths for me. Noah tried. Isaiah could see him trying. The boy's lips moved silently behind the fogged window glass. One breath in, one breath out. But then another burst of static crackled from Ryan's shoulder radio. Noah flinched hard at the sharp sound. Officer Mercer finally glanced toward the child in the back seat, though suspicion still hardened every line of his face. Who is that? He asked. My son, Isaiah answered immediately. He has trauma-related anxiety. Loud noises trigger him. Ryan studied the truck again, eyes narrowing beneath the rain dripping from his cap. The extension cords, the heavy insulated gloves on the dashboard, the emergency utility badge clipped near the steering wheel. What exactly do you do? He asked. Isaiah swallowed slowly before answering. Emergency electrical repair. Storm response work. I was restoring power at a shelter outside Jasper. Ryan said nothing for a moment. Somewhere nearby, thunder rolled low across the dark Alabama sky. Then Noah suddenly covered both ears and curled tighter against the seat. Dad, he whispered shakily. Dad, I want to go home. Isaiah's expression changed instantly. Not panic. Pain. The deep, quiet kind only a parent understood. I know, buddy, he said gently. Just stay with me. Ryan's flashlight beam drifted lower and stopped near the floorboard of the truck. A metal case sat partially hidden beneath a blanket. His posture stiffened immediately. What is that? Isaiah followed his gaze. Tools, he answered carefully. Electrical equipment. Open it. Isaiah hesitated only long enough to glance at Noah again. Officer, if I move too fast, he is going to panic worse. Open the case. The rain intensified around them, hammering against metal and asphalt with deafening force. Isaiah slowly crouched beside the truck and reached into the cab. Noah grabbed his sleeve immediately. Do not leave, the boy whispered, his voice cracking under the weight of fear. Isaiah paused long enough to rest one hand against Noah's cheek. Warm. Steady. Protective. I am right here. Then he lifted the metal case onto the seat and opened it carefully beneath the flashlight beam. Inside sat rows of electrical testing equipment, insulated cutters, voltage meters, repair tags, and emergency utility permits sealed inside waterproof sleeves. Ryan stared down at the contents silently. The dispatcher's voice crackled again through static. Suspect vehicle possibly connected to armed robbery near County Road 14. Isaiah slowly exhaled through his nose. Officer, he said quietly, exhaustion finally slipping into his voice. I think you stopped the wrong truck. Ryan looked up sharply, but before he could answer, another sound shattered the tension completely. Noah's breathing broke into sharp gasps from the back seat. The sound coming from the back seat no longer resembled crying. It was thinner than that, sharper. Each breath caught halfway inside Noah's chest like his lungs had forgotten how to work correctly. Fog spread across the truck windows while rain hammered endlessly overhead, trapping the entire roadside in pulsing red and blue light. Isaiah moved instantly toward the door, but Officer Ryan Mercer reacted first, stepping sideways to block him out of instinct more than thought. Please, Isaiah said, and this time the calm in his voice cracked just enough for fear to show through. My son is having an episode. Noah's small hands clawed at the collar of his hoodie as he struggled to breathe evenly. The stuffed bear dropped onto the floor mat beside his sneakers. His headphones had slipped crooked around his neck, and every burst of radio static made him jerk harder inside the seat. Ryan looked uncertain now, not relaxed, not apologetic, just suddenly less sure of the picture he had built in his head. What kind of episode? He asked cautiously. Isaiah swallowed rainwater from his lips before answering. Post-traumatic stress response. Severe anxiety. Loud confrontations trigger him. Another passing car slowed nearby, headlights cutting across the wet highway shoulder before disappearing into darkness again. Noah's breathing worsened. Isaiah tried once more to move forward. Officer, please let me help my son. Ryan hesitated for one long second, then stepped aside. Isaiah climbed immediately into the back seat beside Noah, without another word. The truck suspension creaked softly beneath his weight. Inside, the cab smelled faintly of rain, wet denim, and old coffee. Isaiah kept his movements slow and deliberate, the way nurses handled frightened children in emergency rooms. "Hey," he whispered softly. "Look at me, Noah. Not the lights. Just me." Noah could barely focus. Tears mixed with sweat along his trembling face while the storm reflected across the windows around him. Isaiah reached carefully into the center console and removed a small laminated card covered in faded handwriting and tiny breathing exercises. The edges had been worn soft from years of use. "Can you read the first line for me?" Isaiah asked gently. Noah stared at the card through shaky breaths. "I am safe." "Good," Isaiah said quietly. Again, outside the truck, Ryan remained standing in the rain beside the open driver door, flashlight lowered now. He watched the scene silently through streams of water rolling down the glass. There was no anger inside the truck, no threat, just a father trying desperately to hold his son together while the world pressed down around them. Noah slowly repeated the words again. "I am safe." Isaiah nodded once. "That is right. You are with me." The boy's breathing eased slightly, though his chest still trembled with each inhale. Isaiah reached down and picked up the stuffed bear from the floorboard before handing it back carefully. One of the stitched seams had dark scorch marks along the fabric. Ryan noticed Isaiah gently brushing water from the toy's burned ear before placing it back into Noah's hands. "Mom's bear," Noah whispered weakly. Isaiah's eyes lowered for a brief second. Pain crossed his face so quickly most people would have missed it. But Ryan saw it. Thunder rolled again somewhere over the pine trees lining the interstate. The dispatcher's voice crackled once more through Ryan's shoulder radio. "Update on suspect vehicle. White Chevrolet sedan, partial plate 862. Ryan's face changed instantly. His flashlight lowered another inch toward the pavement. Slowly, almost mechanically, he looked back at Isaiah's old Ford pickup sitting beneath the rain. Wrong truck. Wrong man. Wrong family. Water dripped from the brim of Ryan's cap as the realization settled heavily across his expression. Inside the cab, Noah finally leaned against his father's shoulder, exhausted from fear. Isaiah closed his eyes briefly and rested his cheek against the top of the boy's head. For several long seconds, neither of them noticed Ryan standing motionless outside in the storm. For a long moment, the only sound on the shoulder of Interstate 65 was rain striking metal and the uneven crackle of Ryan Mercer's radio, fading into static. The urgency that had filled the stop minutes earlier seemed to drain slowly into the flooded pavement beneath his boots. Ryan stood beside the truck staring through the open door while Noah rested weakly against his father's chest, exhausted from panic. Isaiah kept one arm wrapped around the boy and the other pressed gently against the back of his head, rocking almost imperceptibly the way someone rocks a child long after the child is too old for it. "Breathe with me," Isaiah whispered softly. "For seconds in, for seconds out." Noah nodded against his shoulder without lifting his eyes. Ryan swallowed hard as rainwater slid down the side of his face. His flashlight remained lowered now, forgotten near his thigh. Inside the truck, small details began to emerge that he had completely missed before. A half-eaten bag of crackers on the seat beside a coloring book. Prescription bottles neatly organized inside a plastic pharmacy bag. An emergency inhaler tucked beside the cup holder. Folded utility maps stained from repeated use. A handwritten note taped near the dashboard read, "Noah's calming playlist." Ryan felt something tighten uncomfortably in his chest. Not fear. Something heavier. Isaiah finally looked up at him again. There was no hatred in his expression. No rage. Only exhaustion so deep it seemed carved into the lines beneath his eyes. "Officer," he said quietly, "can we please finish this so I can take my son home?" Ryan opened his mouth, but no words came immediately. He glanced toward the wet highway where cars hissed past through curtains of rain. Then his eyes dropped to the reflective emergency badge clipped to Isaiah's jacket. Coleman Electrical Emergency Response. He had seen those crews all week restoring power after the tornado outbreak ripped through central Alabama. Men working 18-hour shifts in flooded neighborhoods while most people stayed safely indoors. Ryan cleared his throat roughly. "You said you were at a shelter?" Isaiah nodded once. "Community storm shelter outside Jasper. Half the backup system failed after lightning hit the transformers." "You fixed it." Isaiah gave a tired shrug. enough to keep heat and oxygen running. Ryan looked down at the soaked pavement for a moment. His jaw tightened subtly, not with anger this time, but with the strain of confronting his own mistake while it still stood breathing in front of him. Dispatch gave the wrong description, he muttered quietly, almost to himself. Isaiah did not answer right away. Noah's breathing had finally steadied beneath the blanket. Outside, thunder rolled farther away now, softer than before. Descriptions matter, Isaiah said carefully at last. The sentence landed heavier than Ryan expected. Neither man moved for several seconds. Then Noah suddenly looked up from his father's shoulder toward the patrol car lights flashing behind them. "Dad?" he whispered weakly. "Are we in trouble?" Isaiah's face softened instantly. "No, buddy," he said. "We are going home soon." Ryan looked away the moment the boy asked the question. The words hit harder than the dispatcher's correction ever could. He turned toward his patrol car briefly and rubbed a hand across his wet forehead. Through the windshield, he caught his own reflection under the spinning lights. Rain-soaked uniform, tight jaw, eyes that suddenly looked older than they had an hour earlier. Then another pair of headlights approached slowly from behind. A second patrol unit pulled onto the shoulder with tires hissing through standing water. Officer Lena Morales stepped out into the storm holding a tablet beneath her jacket. "Ryan," she called over the rain. "I checked the surveillance update from County Road 14. She stopped mid-sentence when she noticed Isaiah sitting in the truck beside Noah. Her eyes flicked toward Ryan immediately. "This is not the vehicle," she said quietly. Ryan nodded once without speaking. Lena studied the scene for a second longer before lowering her voice. "You need to see something." Ryan walked toward her near the rear patrol bumper while rainwater rushed through the roadside gutter beside them. Lena turned the tablet screen toward him. Security footage played beneath streaks of water. Grainy, shaking, but clear enough. A white Chevrolet sedan speeding past a gas station less than 15 minutes earlier. Ryan stared at the screen silently while the flashing lights reflected across his face. Behind him, Isaiah remained seated in the truck holding his son close beneath the storm. Rainwater streamed off the edge of the patrol car roof, while Officer Lena Morales held the tablet beneath the dim glow of her flashlight. The grainy security footage looped silently again and again across the screen. White Chevrolet sedan, broken taillight, temporary paper tag taped crooked inside the rear window. Nothing about it resembled Isaiah Coleman's battered Ford pickup sitting 30 feet away beneath the storm. Ryan Mercer stared at the footage without blinking. The muscles along his jaw flexed once, hard, then settled into something hollow. "Dispatch confirmed it twice," he muttered quietly. Lena lowered the tablet slightly. "They corrected it 3 minutes ago." Ryan did not answer. Behind them, the interstate hissed endlessly beneath passing tires while red and blue reflections rippled across flooded asphalt like fractured glass. He finally turned toward Isaiah's truck again. Through the rain-streaked windows, he could still see the father and son sitting together in silence. Noah had fallen asleep against Isaiah's shoulder at some point during the storm. The little boy's fingers still clutched the burned stuffed bear tightly against his chest, even in sleep. Isaiah remained awake, watching everything. Ryan suddenly noticed how still the man sat. No anger, no shouting, no dramatic confrontation. Just a tired father soaked to the bone after a 14-hour shift trying to calm his child on the side of a highway because somebody else saw danger before humanity. The realization sat heavier than the rain on Ryan's uniform. "You need to clear them," Lena said carefully. Ryan nodded once, but he did not move immediately. His eyes stayed fixed on the truck while something restless moved beneath his expression. Memory, shame, recognition. He walked slowly back toward the open cab, boots splashing through shallow water pooled along the shoulder. Isaiah looked up as he approached. Neither man spoke at first. The storm had softened now into a steady drizzle, leaving only the low rumble of distant thunder rolling somewhere across the hills. Ryan glanced toward Noah before speaking quietly. "He asleep?" Isaiah nodded gently. Finally, Ryan swallowed hard. Up close, the exhaustion in Isaiah's face looked even worse beneath the flashing lights. There was a faint bruise darkening near his cheekbone from earlier, rainwater still dripping from the edges of his curls onto his jacket collar. Ryan looked away from it almost immediately. "Mr. Coleman," he said slowly, "you are free to go." Isaiah remained silent for a moment. Then he looked down at his sleeping son again before answering. "We were free before you stopped us." The words landed softly. That somehow made them hurt more. Ryan lowered his eyes briefly. Behind him, Lena stood near the patrol car pretending to check dispatch updates while giving them space. Isaiah carefully adjusted the blanket around Noah's shoulders. Do you know what he is afraid of most? Isaiah asked quietly. Ryan looked up again. Sir, Isaiah shook his head gently. It is not storms. It is not loud noises. His voice remained calm, almost painfully calm. It is watching grown men lose control. Rain tapped softly against the truck roof above them. Ryan felt heat rise uncomfortably beneath his soaked collar despite the cold air. Isaiah reached carefully toward the dashboard and pulled out a folded photograph tucked beside the steering wheel. He stared at it briefly before offering it toward Ryan. Ryan hesitated, then took it carefully. The photo showed Isaiah standing beside a smiling woman wearing hospital scrubs while Noah sat between them, holding the same stuffed bear before it had been scorched black along one side. Christmas lights glowed behind them in soft yellow blurs. A normal family. A normal life. Ryan looked closer at the woman's face. My wife, Isaiah said quietly. She died 2 years ago during the Dalton substation explosion. Ryan's eyes flicked upward. Every officer in the county remembered that fire. 4 workers trapped. 1 dead. Multiple injuries. Isaiah nodded faintly before Ryan could ask anything else. Noah saw it happen. Silence stretched between them while rainwater dripped steadily from the truck mirrors. Then Ryan noticed something else in the photo background. A little blonde girl sitting in a hospital wheelchair near the Christmas tree, smiling at the camera beside Noah. Ryan's breathing caught almost invisibly. His fingers tightened around the photograph. Because he knew that little girl. Ryan Mercer stared at the photograph while rain drummed softly against the truck roof overhead. The edges of the picture trembled slightly between his fingers, though he could not tell whether it came from the cold or from something breaking loose inside his chest. The little blonde girl near the Christmas tree smiled up at the camera beside Noah with a bright, gap-toothed grin and one arm wrapped around the stuffed bear before it had been damaged by smoke and fire. Ryan knew that smile, knew the tiny scar near her eyebrow, knew the pink hospital bracelet still hanging loosely around her wrist in the photo. His throat tightened instantly. That is, his voice failed before the sentence could finish. Isaiah watched him quietly from inside the cab. Emily, Ryan whispered at last. Isaiah nodded once. Rainwater slid slowly down the windshield between them like blurred tears. Ryan looked back at the photograph again, disbelief spreading visibly across his exhausted face. How do you know my daughter? Isaiah leaned his head back against the seat for a moment before answering. Because she was trapped beside Noah during the substation explosion. Ryan's breathing stopped cold. The highway noise seemed to disappear completely beneath the weight of the words. 2 years earlier, the Dalton electrical substation had erupted during a transformer overload while repair crews worked through the night to restore power after a tornado outbreak. The explosion lit half the county orange. Everyone remembered it. What Ryan had never known was who carried his daughter out of that fire. Emily had only been there because Ryan brought her dinner during his overnight shift before the emergency call came through. She had been waiting inside the service office when the blast ripped through the building. Ryan remembered the smoke, the screaming sirens, the ambulance lights reflecting across wet pavement while doctors fought to stabilize her lungs. But the man who rescued her disappeared before reporters arrived. The department called him an unidentified utility worker. Ryan slowly lifted his eyes toward Isaiah again. That was you. Isaiah nodded faintly. Your little girl was unconscious near the east corridor. His voice stayed soft, almost distant now, like someone replaying memories he wished he could forget. Noah and my wife were already outside. I went back for Emily because I heard her coughing. Ryan felt his chest tighten painfully beneath the soaked uniform. You went back inside? Isaiah looked down at his sleeping son. Any father would have. The words struck harder than accusation ever could. Ryan remembered every bitter thing he had assumed tonight before ever asking questions. Dangerous suspect. Threat. Aggression. He remembered Noah shaking in fear beneath the patrol lights while Isaiah begged him to lower his voice. And all the while the man sitting in front of him had once carried his daughter through smoke and falling debris without asking who she belonged to first. Ryan looked away sharply, jaw tightening as emotion flickered across his face too quickly to control. Nearby, Officer Lena Morales remained silent beside the patrol unit, understanding enough not to interrupt. Isaiah carefully reached over and took the photograph back before slipping it into the dashboard compartment again. "Emily doing okay?" he asked quietly after a moment. Ryan nodded slowly. "Yeah." His voice sounded rough now. "She still has breathing treatments sometimes, but yeah, she is okay." Isaiah gave the faintest smile. Small, tired, genuine. Good. Another silence settled between them, softer this time. The rain had nearly stopped now, leaving only water dripping steadily from the pine trees lining the interstate. Ryan stared at Noah sleeping against his father's shoulder beneath the faded blanket. The same little boy who survived the explosion that killed his mother. The same little boy he terrified tonight because fear and assumption moved faster than compassion. Ryan finally removed his cap and ran a shaking hand across his face. For the first time in years, he looked less like a police officer standing beside the road, and more like a man suddenly forced to confront the ugliest parts of himself beneath flashing lights that no longer felt powerful at all. The storm finally began drifting east, leaving the interstate wrapped in damp silence and fading patrol lights. Water dripped steadily from the guardrails while mist hovered low above the asphalt, like smoke refusing to disappear. Ryan Mercer stood motionless beside Isaiah's truck with his cap hanging loosely from one hand. His shoulders looked heavier now, as if every assumption he made tonight had settled onto him all at once. Inside the cab, Noah stirred slightly against his father's chest, but did not wake. Isaiah adjusted the blanket around the boy with slow, careful movements, protecting his sleep the same way someone shields a candle from wind. Ryan watched quietly. "Emily still talks about the man who carried her out," he said after a long silence. His voice sounded smaller than before, roughened by regret. Isaiah kept his eyes on Noah. "I did not carry her alone," he answered softly. "My wife helped me get her outside." Ryan nodded faintly, remembering the reports from that night. One fatality. Female utility technician. He swallowed hard. "Your wife?" Isaiah's jaw tightened almost invisibly. "Angela." Rainwater slid down the windshield beside him while the name hung quietly between them. "She went back inside to shut down the secondary lines after we got the kids out." He paused briefly. "The second explosion happened before she made it back." Ryan lowered his eyes immediately. Somewhere behind them, Lena Morales quietly returned to her patrol car, giving the moment privacy neither man asked for out loud. Isaiah brushed his thumb gently across Noah's shoulder through the blanket. "Noah has not liked flashing lights since then," he said quietly. "Or shouting. Or sirens." Ryan felt something twist painfully inside his chest again. Earlier tonight, he had flooded this child with every sound and image connected to the worst moment of his life. And Isaiah never once screamed back, never once threatened him. Ryan looked toward the dark highway, unable to hold Isaiah's gaze for more than a second now. "I thought," he stopped himself. The sentence collapsed beneath its own shame before it could finish. Isaiah finally looked at him fully. "You thought what?" Ryan's throat tightened. "I thought I knew what kind of stop this was the second I saw your truck." The confession landed raw beneath the fading rain. Isaiah studied him quietly for several long seconds. No anger crossed his face. Somehow that hurt Ryan more than if there had been. "Fear teaches people strange habits," Isaiah said at last, "especially when the world keeps rewarding them for listening to it." Ryan shut his eyes briefly. Every instinct he trusted as a police officer suddenly felt contaminated by something uglier than caution. He thought about Emily asleep safely at home tonight, because the man sitting in front of him once ran into fire instead of away from it. And only hours later Ryan had treated that same man like a threat before hearing a single sentence fully through. Noah shifted again, then slowly opened his eyes. Sleepy confusion flickered across his face as he noticed the patrol lights still reflecting through the windows. Instantly his fingers tightened around the stuffed bear. Isaiah leaned close immediately. "Hey," he whispered softly. "It is okay. We are leaving soon." Noah blinked toward Ryan standing outside in the wet darkness. For a second fear crossed the boy's expression again. Ryan noticed it immediately. That fear belonged to him now. "Did I do something bad?" Noah asked weakly. The question shattered what little composure Ryan still held together. He looked away sharply, jaw tightening as emotion rose hard into his throat. Isaiah rested one hand gently against Noah's hair. "No, buddy," he said softly. "You did nothing wrong." Ryan took one slow breath before finally forcing himself to speak directly to the child. Neither did your dad. Noah studied him silently beneath the blanket. The flashing lights painted blue shadows beneath Ryan's exhausted eyes, while rainwater dripped from the edge of his sleeve onto the pavement below. For the first time all night, the officer no longer looked powerful standing there beside the road. He looked ashamed, and he knew the little boy in front of him could see it. The last of the storm clouds drifted slowly beyond the tree line, leaving the highway wrapped in damp midnight stillness. The flashing patrol lights no longer felt sharp against the darkness now. They pulsed softer across the wet asphalt, reflecting in long trembling streaks beneath the truck tires and roadside puddles. Noah sat upright beneath the blanket, still leaning against his father, his tired eyes fixed cautiously on Ryan Mercer, standing outside the open door. The little boy looked smaller than before somehow. Not physically, emotionally, like fear had quietly folded him inward during the night. Isaiah noticed it immediately. He always did. "Hey," Isaiah whispered gently, adjusting the blanket higher around Noah's shoulders. "You remember what your mom used to say about storms?" Noah hesitated, then nodded faintly. "They sound bigger than they are." Isaiah smiled softly. "That is right." Ryan looked down at the pavement as the words settled heavily inside him. For most of his career, he believed fear kept people alive. Stay alert. Move first. Assume danger before danger assumes you. Years on patrol had trained those instincts into his bones until suspicion arrived faster than thought itself. But standing beside Isaiah's truck now, Ryan realized something painful. Fear had not protected anyone tonight. It had only frightened a grieving child and humiliated the man who once saved his daughter's life without hesitation. Ryan took one slow breath before finally speaking. "Mr. Coleman," his voice nearly failed again. He forced himself to continue. "I owe you more than an apology." Isaiah remained quiet, waiting. Ryan glanced briefly toward Lena Morales beside the patrol car before reaching up and unclipping the small body camera attached to his chest. The blinking red recording light reflected faintly across his wet fingers. "Everything from tonight is recorded," he said carefully. "I am filing the full report myself." Exactly how it happened. Isaiah studied him for a long moment. "And then what?" Ryan swallowed. The question cut deeper because he did not have an easy answer. "Then I deal with whatever comes after." Noah looked between the two men silently, while rainwater continued dripping from the truck mirrors into shallow puddles below. Isaiah finally leaned back slightly against the seat. "Do you know what my wife believed?" he asked quietly. Ryan shook his head once. Isaiah's eyes drifted toward the dark highway beyond the windshield. "Angela used to say people reveal themselves most clearly when they think nobody will challenge them." His gaze returned to Ryan. "Tonight challenged both of us." Ryan lowered his eyes immediately. Shame moved visibly across his face again. Isaiah could see it now in the man's posture, in the way his shoulders sagged beneath the soaked uniform, in the silence between every sentence. The anger was gone. What remained looked painfully human. Noah suddenly shifted beneath the blanket and looked toward Ryan again. "Are you Emily's dad?" he asked softly. Ryan blinked in surprise before nodding slowly. "Yeah," he answered quietly. "I am." Noah stared at him for another second. "She gave me this bear after the hospital." He lifted the scorched, stuffed animal slightly from beneath the blanket. "Mine got burned." Ryan felt his chest tighten again. He remembered Emily crying for weeks after the explosion. Remembered the nightmares. The breathing machines. The way she asked over and over about the boy from the fire she never got to thank properly. "She still talks about you," Ryan said gently. Noah looked surprised by that. Isaiah rested one hand softly against his son's shoulder, while silence settled warmly inside the truck for the first time all night. Not comfortable exactly, but honest. Ryan glanced once more at Isaiah before speaking again, quieter this time. "You had every reason to hate me tonight." Isaiah looked out toward the fading storm. "Maybe," he said softly, "but my son has already survived enough anger to last a lifetime." The words hung in the damp night air, while somewhere far down the interstate the first faint hint of dawn began touching the horizon pale gray. 3 weeks later, the rain was gone from Birmingham. Morning sunlight spilled softly across the parking lot of Hope Harbor Therapy Center, warming the sidewalks still damp from overnight dew. Wind moved gently through the oak trees lining the street, carrying the distant sounds of traffic and children laughing somewhere beyond the fence. Isaiah Coleman sat quietly on a wooden bench outside the building while Noah colored beside him with careful concentration, the scorched stuffed bear resting safely in his lap. The boy looked lighter now. Not completely healed. Maybe he never would be, but lighter. Sometimes healing arrived quietly like sunrise, slow enough that people only noticed after the darkness was already gone. Isaiah watched Noah carefully shade the corner of a picture with a blue crayon while the morning sun touched the side of his face. The bruise near Isaiah's cheekbone had faded almost entirely now. Across the parking lot, a dark sedan rolled slowly into an empty space near the curb. Ryan Mercer stepped out wearing plain clothes instead of his patrol uniform for the first time Noah had ever seen. No badge, no flashing lights, just jeans, a gray jacket, and tired eyes that still carried the weight of the night on the interstate. He hesitated beside the car for a moment before walking toward them. Noah noticed him first. His small hand tightened briefly around the stuffed bear, but he did not hide this time. Isaiah looked up calmly as Ryan approached. The morning breeze rustled through the therapy center banners overhead, while distant church bells echoed faintly somewhere downtown. Ryan stopped a few feet away from the bench. "I did not want to interrupt," he said quietly. Isaiah nodded once. "You are here anyway." Ryan accepted the truth in that without argument. He held a large manila envelope loosely in one hand. The edges looked worn, like he had carried it around for days deciding whether or not to bring it. Noah watched him silently while sunlight reflected softly across the parking lot windows behind them. Ryan finally extended the envelope toward Isaiah. "The department review board finished yesterday." Isaiah did not take it immediately. Ryan lowered his eyes briefly before continuing. "I filed everything exactly as it happened." His voice remained steady, though regret still lived beneath every word. There were disciplinary hearings, mandatory bias evaluation, suspension. He paused. "I accepted all of it." Isaiah slowly took the envelope but did not open it. The breeze lifted one corner of the paperwork before settling again. Ryan looked toward Noah then. "Emily wanted me to give you something too." From his jacket pocket, he carefully removed a small folded drawing made with colored pencils. Noah accepted it cautiously. The picture showed two stick-figure children standing beside a fire truck beneath a bright yellow sun. One figure held a stuffed bear with one burned ear colored black. Across the top, written in uneven handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for saving my life." Noah stared at the drawing quietly for several seconds before looking up at Ryan. "She remembers me?" Ryan smiled faintly for the first time all morning. Every day, something soft shifted across Noah's expression then. Not fear, not quite trust either, but something closer to understanding. Isaiah watched the exchange in silence while sunlight moved slowly across the sidewalk beneath their feet. Ryan finally stepped back, hands resting awkwardly in his jacket pockets. "I spent a long time believing being a good officer meant never hesitating," he admitted quietly. "But that night taught me hesitation is sometimes the only thing standing between judgment and humanity." Isaiah looked down at the unopened envelope resting in his hands. "And did you learn it in time?" Ryan glanced toward Noah sitting safely beside his father beneath the morning light. His answer came almost like a confession. "Not soon enough." Silence settled gently around them after that. Not hostile, not comfortable, honest. A breeze carried the smell of fresh-cut grass through the parking lot, while somewhere nearby a child laughed inside the therapy center halls. Noah suddenly held up his drawing toward Isaiah with the smallest hint of a smile. Isaiah smiled back instantly. Ryan watched the moment quietly, then lowered his head once before turning toward his car. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not expect it. He simply walked away beneath the soft Alabama sunlight, while behind him a father and son remained together on the bench, wrapped not in fear anymore, but in the quiet warmth of surviving.